What are you willing to sacrifice? The act of giving something up to gain something more important. Not only is sacrifice a vital endeavor for our success, but a foundation for the universe itself. Newton's third law states that for every action in nature, there is an equal and opposite reaction. It's hard to really get across just how crucial sacrifices are in our lives, the inevitable need for them, and the need to accept their underlying consequences. It's not an understatement when I say every human being must have an education in the courage, fear, and heartbreak involved in this essential act. And in my eyes, there is no better cinematic representation of giving up what's most important to you than in Sir Christopher Nolan's space epic, Interstellar. It's a story that deeply explores the lengths we are willing to go for the ones we love, the world we cherish, and the survival of our species. This masterpiece of a film has taught me so much about the human condition, but what personally resonated with me most after all these years and countless rewatches is just how truthfully it depicts sacrifice. Our introduction to the world of Interstellar is grim. Reckless consumption and gross negligence have allowed blight to run rampant. Our species finds itself on the brink of starvation and collapse. Forced to use his engineering skills for farming, Cooper and his family are members of a caretaker generation, hopeful for a brighter future which is dimly lit. With nightmares of crashes and views of bleak horizons, Cooper is stuck in the dirt. After the morning ritual of clearing dust off every surface, he's unbothered by most anything. But his family is clearly a source of comfort. It takes a conveniently timed flat tire till we see the first spark of excitement emanate from Coop. As an artifact of the old world flies by, his mood is completely turned over. Ignoring the flat, Cooper and his kids take off in a feverish pursuit. In the grandeur of IMAX and Hans Zimmer, they tear through cornfields and barbed wire. Brimming with focus and adventure, Cooper's rush of adrenaline is palpable and almost hazardous. But successful they emerge, taming a relic of technology which will now be plucked from the sky and put to work in the dirt. This is the scene where we're properly introduced to Cooper, and I'd even argue it's one of the most insightful scenes for us as an audience to learn about the man he is. I'm not breaking any new ground here when I say that the Indian Air Force drone is a reflection of Cooper, meant to soar the sky but forced to land and adapt. And here's where we get our first lesson in sacrifice. Cooper's passion and dream for exploring the far reaches of the universe as a NASA pilot were stolen from him, his purpose made redundant by this new world. And instead of wallowing on what could have been, he puts his family first and harvests his skills for what was needed more. Whilst Murph's sentiment of
"Can't we just let it go?"
is a cute suggestion, it's not a helpful one. And it breaks Cooper's heart just that little bit to admit to her this reality, and to be reminded that it's also his own.
It wasn't hurting anybody.
This thing needs to learn how to adapt, Murph. Like the rest of us.
And it continues not just to be his reality but also his future. The journey of Interstellar has Cooper shed himself of all he holds dear, sacrificing his home, his children, his life, divesting himself of connection and habitat for something bigger than himself, bigger than anyone. Above being an engineer, astronaut, farmer, Cooper is a father. And the most difficult sacrifice a man in his position can make is abandoning his children. Any parent will tell you that the moment they first lay eyes on their child, their whole world is staring back at them. Now, does Cooper save the world or stay with his world? On paper, the right choice is simple, but it's the hardest right choice anyone could make, and Nolan brilliantly captures the repercussions of that decision. Cooper never really took the mission just to save the world, but to salvage a future where his children could live full and happy lives. At the heart of Interstellar is a father's story, and his ability to perform the ultimate sacrifice.
Grandpa attended the ceremony. Oh. I met another girl, Dad. I really think this is the one.
Cooper certainly is the most prominent vehicle for the theme of sacrifice in Interstellar, even sacrificing his normal voice for this annoying-ass raspy whisper.
I just don't think your bookshelf's trying to talk to you.
Did nobody tell him that Nolan movies already have terrible audio? For fuck's sake. But he's not the only tool in Nolan's shed to help hammer the message home. The members of the Lazarus missions and the crew of the Endurance all have equally weighted, albeit hidden, sacrifices. Edmund's leaving Brand leaving her father, Doyle's death, and Romilly losing arguably the most in both his youth and his life. Even our friendly neighborhood robot TARS agrees to enter Gargantua to glimpse the singularity for its data. And you might say he's a robot and he's just following orders, but it's obvious from the scene with the Q-Light that's not the case. TARS's decision gives us evidence that sacrifice isn't just figurative, it's mathematical. He computes that falling into Gargantua for the potential of invaluable data is a sacrifice worth making.
Newton's third law. The only way humans have ever figured out of getting somewhere is to leave something behind.
But it's also because TARS is the GOAT. Literally the only capable member of this crew, surrounded by amateurs.
I have a Q-Light I can use when I'm joking, if you like.
That'd probably help.
Yeah, you can use it to find your way back into the ship after I blow you out the airlock.
As noble as sacrifice is in the case of all I just mentioned, it isn't without its flaws. Sacrifice for the wrong reasons is an unconscionable failure. Said to be the best of us all, but in truth turning out to be the most selfish of us all, Dr. Man, as his name so poetically encapsulates, is the physical manifestation of human arrogance. With the inability to live with his failure, man almost dooms humanity itself, boiling his malevolent decisions down to survival instinct and the empathy that comes with it, hypocritically stating,
evolution has yet to transcend that simple barrier. We can care deeply, selflessly, about those we know, but that empathy rarely extends beyond our line of sight.
Man also mentions how this instinct extends to Cooper's kids, trying to justify that it was the only way Professor Brand could get him to go on the mission. These monstrous lies from Brand to each and every crew member, including his own daughter, are quoted as necessary evils, as valiant efforts for a greater cause, but in reality they are simply sentiments of disillusion from arrogant experts.
He was prepared to destroy his own humanity in order to save the species. He made an incredible sacrifice.
No, the incredible sacrifice is being made by the people on Earth. They're gonna die because in his arrogance, he declared their case hopeless.
On that note, there's a great video by Empire of the Mind called The Horrifying Failure of Experts. I highly recommend checking it out. He covers the many shortcomings of the acclaimed experts and how in reality experts of any field of human endeavor are flawed people just like everyone else. Also, some of you may be surprised to know, I know I was, that there's an Interstellar prequel comic called Absolute Zero, which Nolan wrote himself, that follows Dr. Man's descent into darkness. If you're a fan, I recommend checking it out. Now with all this going on in the depths of space, there's still an uncleaned mess left back on Earth, a mess in the form of Cooper's children. There's always been a misinformed tendency for the audience to paint Tom as a villain and Murph as a savior. The splicing of the scene where Dr. Man tries to kill Coop and Murph burning the crops doesn't help negate that narrative. But in the vein of sacrifice and its consequences, both Cooper's kids are profoundly scarred by his departure, not just Murph. We get a clearer visual at her trauma whilst Tom buries his emotions, but that doesn't mean they're not there. When Cooper left, Tom made a solemn promise to his father to look after the house and the farm. Even when his wife tells him to let Cooper go and move on, his stubbornness to that promise results in the death of his firstborn child and serious illness for the rest of his family, all as a coping mechanism, desperately clinging on to the last connection he has with his father, the farm, the house, the promise. Tom's actions in this film are far from just evil. They're just yet another affectation of a hero's sacrifice, and definitely shouldn't be compared to Dr. Man. It isn't all clear skies and rainbows. The larger the sacrifice, the larger the consequences. Now the final question arises. Were the sacrifices worth it? Yes. Unequivocally, unambiguously. This movie answers that question in its savior of humanity. And the fact that Plan A was successful lays the foundation for humanity to move forward prosperously. This takes me back to a scene that is a favorite of mine. As Donald and Cooper chat, Donald talks about life before Blight. The world and its people were in a very different state, driven by greed and selfishness. But in this new world where resources are scarce, people have woken up, changed their ways, become less wasteful, less isolated, more collaborative.
But 6 billion people. Just try to imagine that. And every last one of them trying to have it all. This world isn't so bad.
And Donald's absolutely right. This world isn't so bad. It's actually kind of great. But the right intentions coming along at the wrong time. The lesson's been learned, but nowhere to put it to use. That lesson being, if you're not willing to sacrifice the things you desire most, you won't move forward. Not as a person or as a species. In a sort of trial by fire sense, humanity evolves into something better. And as viable as Plan B was on paper, with a new colony on a new planet, I just don't think the results would be the same. And here's where I'm probably going to get some flack, but within the vomit of dialogue from Brand, there is truth.
Love is the one thing we're capable of perceiving that transcends dimensions of time and space.
None of this is possible without love. Love is what enables us to make these incredible sacrifices. It's the fuel, the driving force. It is quantifiable. It's a resource, the most important one we have. If you run out of love, there is no planet to slingshot off. There is no docking procedure. You're stranded in darkness with no salvation beyond the horizon. It's always been about moving forward. Promise was made. Closure was gained. A parent should never have to watch their child die. The past is weight shed to gain projection for the future. Whether you enjoy Interstellar as a cinematic experience or as an allegory for the pertinence of sacrifice in one's life, me. This film is a treasure trove of beautiful images, sounds, and ideas. Go watch it if you haven't, watch it again if you have, and let me know in the comments below what you love about Interstellar. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you can sacrifice a tiny moment of your time to like and subscribe. It goes a long way. And as always, appreciate you watching.